There we go. So as they're coming out, just quickly, with little Bruce, as they're waving Nia, again, Florida. Carl hit on this a second ago. Why is Florida so crucial for her?
Well, you know, if they block Donald Trump in Florida, he will not be president. I think she essentially said those exact words today. So there you have Al Gore, who I think, you know, I don't think millennials are enamored of Al Gore. And in some ways, it speaks to a deficit that Democrats have with millennials, the fact that they think they can bring Al Gore out and stir up some excitement among millennials. But listen, they need as many people out there as possible carrying the message of Democrats.
Here she is. Hello, Miami. Let's dip in.
It is so great to be here with all of you, and I want to thank everyone for gathering, and in particular, I want to thank all the elected officials. Thanks to Congressman Patrick Murphy, who I hope is the next senator from Florida. Thanks to Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Thank you to Mayor Philip Levine of Miami Beach. Thanks to Mayor Philip Stoddard of South Miami. Thanks to all the others who were part of the program. As we were coming in, we heard lots of energy coming from this crowd. And I was told as I was coming out, there's an overflow, but that they can hear us in the overflow, and we're so happy that you're here as well. So thanks to the overflow crowd. But what I am most excited about is to be here with one of the world's foremost leaders on climate change, Al Gore. You know, about a decade ago, Al made a movie called An Inconvenient Truth. Now, maybe some of you have seen it, but if you haven't, I hope you'll watch it tonight. Now, it doesn't have a lot of special effects, but it does have a lot of drama. And here's the main message. Climate change is real, it's urgent, and America can take the lead in the world in addressing it, right? We here in America can develop new clean energy solutions. We can transform our economy. We can rally the world to cut carbon pollution. And above all, we can fulfill our moral obligation to protect our planet for our children and our grandchildren. Now, let me just say, let's remember what's at stake. I'm running against a guy who denies science, denies climate change, says it's a hoax created by the Chinese. So this is something that Al Gore has been working on for a really long time. And I want you to know how far back he goes. It was in 1982 when he held the very first hearing on climate change in the House of Representatives with the world-famous climate scientist Jim Hansen. And then when Al became a senator, he continued to raise the alarm and look for solutions. And as vice president, he led America's efforts to negotiate the Kyoto Protocol to cut greenhouse gas emissions. And you take all this together, those 30 years of leadership led Al Gore to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. I was very proud because he had been determined and persistent, and in the face of a lot of people in public life, in business, and elsewhere who were trying to diminish the importance of the science, he never wavered. And in the years since, the climate challenge has only grown more stark. And I will tell you this, it is one of the most important issues at stake in this election. Look at it this way. Our next president will either step up our efforts to address climate change, to protect our planet, to protect our health, and to create good jobs that cannot be outsourced by growing our clean energy economy, or, in the alternative, we will be dragged backwards and our whole future will be put at risk. So we've really got to get this right. And if you need additional convincing, just remember what happened this week. Hurricane Matthew killed at least 26 people in our country, more than 1,000 as far as we know right now in Haiti. North Carolina is still dealing with serious flooding and will be, at least for the rest of this week, if not longer. We all need to support each other as our communities put the pieces back together and begin the long road back from this disaster. That's why I've encouraged everyone to give what you can afford to the Florida Disaster Fund or to Team Rubicon, the veterans organization working to respond to Hurricane Matthew, or to UNICEF helping children and families on the ground in Haiti. Now, some will say, you know, we've always had hurricanes. They've always been destructive, and that's true. But Hurricane Matthew was likely more destructive because of climate change. Right now, the ocean is at or near record high temperatures, and that contributed to the torrential rainfall and the flash flooding that we saw in the Carolinas. Sea levels have already risen about a foot, 1 foot, in much of the southeast, which means that Matthew's storm surge was higher and the flooding was more severe. Plus, as you know, the impact of climate change goes beyond extreme events like hurricanes. It's become a daily reality here in Miami. You have streets in Miami Beach and in Shorecrest that are flooding at high tide. The ocean is bubbling up through the sewer system. Sometimes people call 311 because they assume a water main must have broken, when actually it is the sea rising around them. So if you need proof that climate change is real and that it's costly, there you go. So, at this rate, my friends, please, let's focus on what's really important in this election and in your future and the future of our country. Because this is what I want you to hear and understand. At the rate we are going, 1 in 8 homes in Florida could be underwater by the end of the century. And when kids like that adorable young boy over there on his dad's shoulders are grandparents, we believe that's more than $400 billion worth of property in Florida at risk. And nationwide, it's $882 billion in property at risk. But there's also health consequences. Mosquitoes that carry diseases like the Zika virus and ticks that carry Lyme disease are expanding their ranges. And hotter summers and longer pollen seasons are making allergies and asthma worse, which is especially bad for our children. And look at what's happened in California, a brutal 5-year drought. Wildfires have burned more than 9 million acres in our country last year. And it's also about our national security. The Pentagon has identified climate change as a threat to our national security. The U.S. Atlantic Fleet is based in Norfolk, Virginia. It's the largest naval installation in the world. And because of rising sea levels, the base is frequently flooded, even when it's sunny. So that's why the Pentagon is looking at how climate change will affect readiness and operations, not just in Norfolk, but at all of our military bases around the world. So you would think, if you look at the facts, if you listen to the science, that even the most committed climate skeptic would say, okay, I agree, something's happening here, we need to take it seriously. But unfortunately, there are still too many people in Washington, on the campaign trail, who won't face what's happening right in front of us. Donald Trump is, quote, not a big believer in climate change. And, you know, as I said, he says it's a hoax created by the Chinese, and in our first debate 2 weeks ago, he tried to deny saying that. But, you know, that tweet is still there for everyone to see, and I would wish that Donald would actually listen to people here in Florida, like Miami Beach's mayor, Philip Levine, and others who are doing incredible work to address these sunny day floods. Or maybe he would listen to Miami Beach Commissioner John Elizabeth Alamon. John Elizabeth's a Republican, but she's supporting our campaign because she knows America can't afford a candidate who doesn't accept climate science. Or maybe Donald would listen to our military leaders who say climate change threatens our national security. Or what about the ranchers in Colorado, or the mayors in Arizona, and the community leaders in Alaska who say our lives and jobs are being affected? Please, let's come together as a country and do something about it. We cannot risk putting a climate denier in the White House at all. That is absolutely unacceptable. We need a president who believes in science and who has a plan to lead America in facing this threat and creating good jobs and, yes, saving our planet. So here's what I want to do. First, we need to do a lot more on clean energy. The clean energy superpower of the 21st century is probably going to be either Germany, China, or us, and I want it to be us. And I want you to be part of making it us. And we need to accelerate the transition to a clean energy economy and create high-paying jobs, building and installing more solar panels and wind turbines, modernizing our electric grid, retrofitting buildings, building resilient 21st century infrastructure. And we have to make sure no community is left out or left behind, not our inner cities or our small towns or our remote rural areas. Now, you wouldn't know it if you only listened to my opponent talk about how terrible everything is. He has such a dark, divisive view of America. But that doesn't tell the story about what's really going on. It's actually pretty exciting. In red states and blue states, local leaders are stepping up. Rural electric co-ops are investing in community solar power. And you see that across America. Union workers in Michigan are getting ready to build electric Chevys in a plant powered by clean energy. Iowa is already getting a third of its electricity from wind. Wind turbines are going up in New England and on Lake Erie. Renewable energy is already the fastest growing source of new jobs in America. I think that is so exciting. There are nearly 2 million people already working in energy efficiency. And in Spartanburg, South Carolina, a project called Regenesis is taking an old landfill and turning it into a solar farm. That landfill was a blight and a health threat, just 250 feet away from a residential neighborhood. Now that same land will generate enough clean, renewable electricity to power 500 homes. So this is what we can do. And I think it's time Washington should back up and support doing more of that. As president, I want us to have 500 million more solar panels installed across America by the end of my first term. And let's generate enough renewable energy to power every home in America within the decade. Let's make our buildings and factories more energy efficient and cut our oil consumption by a third. And we can get there by investing and supporting in cutting-edge research to keep developing cheaper and better clean energy technologies, investing in clean energy infrastructure and advanced manufacturing, putting big partnerships together between states, cities, and rural communities. We can do all of this and create millions of good-paying jobs as we do. So I'm hoping that these good jobs will offer security and dignity while we produce the clean energy that will power the economy of the future. The clean energy solutions are being developed right here in America. We want them manufactured in America and installed in America and putting people to work in America. While we do that, let's make sure that our communities are ready for the impacts of climate change that are coming right at us. We need to invest in resilient infrastructure. Now, sometimes that might mean building a seawall. Other times, let's be more creative. Like in New York Harbor, where we're replanting oyster beds to form natural barriers to storm surge. Sometimes we'll overhaul an outdated sewer system to deal with flooding from heavy downpours. In Philadelphia, they're trying something else: green roofs, porous pavements, curbside gardens to help absorb stormwater. And here's something we don't talk enough about. Let's make sure our hospitals can stay open and operational in any kind of disaster. Because sadly, I saw what happened in New York during Hurricane Sandy. Newborns who had been on respirators had to be evacuated down 9 flights of stairs in one New York hospital because the electricity went off. Nurses, I love nurses, heroic, courageous nurses, were carrying those babies and manually squeezing bags of air to keep them breathing. Now, here in Miami, you know how important this is. You have retrofitted the Nicholas Children's Hospital with a hurricane-resistant shell for exactly this reason. And every hospital in the country should follow your lead and build in more resilience. And then finally, we've got to lead the world to confront the climate challenge. If we don't do it, no one will do it. We must confront the climate challenge. There's no doubt about that. And so let's move on with the kind of leadership that the world as well as our country deserves. You know, when I was Secretary of State, I worked with President Obama to make climate change a top diplomatic priority. We fought to get China and India and other major polluters to agree for the first time in history to be part of the solution. In fact, we had to crash a secret meeting in Copenhagen, Denmark, slip past the guards. It was all very cloak and dagger, but for a really important purpose. And because of that breakthrough and a lot of patient, persistent work, and because of American leadership, 195 nations signed on to a global agreement last December. It's called the Paris Agreement. And I am not exaggerating when I say it is our last best chance to solve the global climate crisis. And what does Donald Trump want to do? He wants to cancel the Paris Agreement. You know, he doesn't care what it would do to the planet. He doesn't care how much that would damage American leadership. He doesn't care what it would do to the future we leave our kids and our grandkids. Well, he may not care, but we do, and that's why this election is so critically important. Because on the ballot is not just my name, it's every issue you care about. It's our values as a country. Climate change needs to be a voting issue. We need to elect people up and down the ballot at every level of government who take it seriously and are willing to roll up their sleeves and get something done. Please, we cannot keep sending climate deniers and defeatists to Congress or state houses, and certainly not to the White House. And you know, if you care about climate, your Senate race is also really important. And I'll tell you why. It is unacceptable. It is an unacceptable response for Marco Rubio, when asked about climate change, to say, "I'm not a scientist." Well, why doesn't he ask a scientist? And maybe then he'd understand why it's so important that he, representing Florida, be committed to climate change. That's why I hope you'll elect Patrick Murphy to the United States Senate. Look, we need leaders who can get results. It's easy to stonewall. It's not enough to protest. We need creativity. We need hard work. And when it comes to climate change, we don't have a minute to waste. And so I know it's easy to get cynical, especially about our politics. I get that. But this election matters more than any has in a really long time. And I believe that as strongly as I can, we've got to address this issue for our sakes, our children, our grandchildren. And it's so critically important when you think about how leadership can make a difference. And just look, if you will, look at the difference between your state, the Sunshine State, which has less solar energy than New Jersey has right now. And you know why? Because you have a governor who has ordered your state government never to use the words climate change. So, my friends, this is a big deal in this election, and it's going to be a big deal for our country and our world. And there isn't anybody who knows more, has done more, has worked harder. I know he was in Miami just last year, training and educating people to be climate change activists. I can't wait to have Al Gore advising me when I am President of the United States. So please join me in welcoming our former Vice President, a climate change leader and an all-around great guy, Al Gore.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Secretary Clinton. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the warm welcome. I appreciated those kind words very much. I want to acknowledge all of the elected officials and distinguished guests who are here, and I want to say a special word of thanks to President Eduardo Padron and Miami-Dade College. I understand you've got a pretty good women's volleyball team here, so go Lady Sharks, is that what you say? I'm here today with two very simple messages. Number one, when it comes to the most urgent issue facing our country and the world, the choice in this election is extremely clear. Hillary Clinton will make solving the climate crisis a top national priority. Very important. Her opponent, based on the ideas that he has presented, would take us toward a climate catastrophe. So that's my first message. The climate crisis is and must be regarded as a top national priority and a top global priority. Here's my second message. Your vote really, really, really counts a lot. You can consider me as an exhibit A of that truth. Now, for those of you who are younger than 25, you might not remember the election of 2000 and what happened here in Florida and across the country. For those of you older than 25, I heard you murmuring just now, but take it from me, it was a very close election. Elections, well, here's my point. Here's my point. I don't want you to be in a position years from now where you welcome Hillary Clinton and say, actually, you did win. It just wasn't close enough to make sure that all the votes were counted or whatever. Elections have consequences. Your vote counts. Your vote has consequences. And in this election, the future of Miami and cities up and down the west coast and east coast of Florida are on the ballot as well. Indeed, the entire state of Florida and its future are on this ballot. So is our economy, our health, our national security. The common thread that binds all of these issues together, what we decide to do about carbon pollution and its damage to the ecological system of the earth. I don't have to tell you here in Florida that the climate crisis is real. Yes, it's true that some of your elected officials have not recognized that it's real. But every single night on the television news is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. You look at the floods and the droughts and the mudslides and the fires and the incredible downpours, and as Secretary Clinton just mentioned, Hurricane Matthew just recently. You know, it spun up from a tropical storm into a Category 5 hurricane in just 36 hours. That's extremely unusual. And the reason that happened is the climate crisis is trapping so much extra heat in the Earth system, equivalent to what would be released by 400,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs going off every day. It's a big planet, but that's a lot of energy, and it's warming the oceans. More than 90% of that heat energy goes into the oceans. And so the Southern Caribbean, where it spun up into a Category 5 so quickly, was much warmer than normal because of that. And the Gulf Stream is way warmer than normal for this time of year for the same reason. So this means also that all the water vapor coming off the oceans into the atmosphere is brought over the land, and so we get these record downpours. Just in the last year, we have seen 1 in 1,000 year downpours in Louisiana, West Virginia, Texas, Maryland. In Houston, in one 12-month period, they've just had 2 500-year floods and 1 1,000-year downpour. In one of them, they had as much water dumped on Harris County, Texas, where Houston is, as would have been put there by 3.5 days of the entire flow of Niagara Falls. This is not normal. It is becoming the new normal, which is now a set of conditions that we have created with all of this man-made global warming pollution. Secretary Clinton also mentioned the sea level rise. We have seen already, some of you who are a little bit older may remember Hurricane Andrew absolutely. When Hillary and I were first campaigning together in 1992, Hurricane Andrew came through. Just since Hurricane Andrew, the sea level in the waters around Florida have gone up 3 inches since Hurricane Andrew. And every vertical inch of sea level rise means 4 to 8 feet of the water going inward, and the storm surges on top of that. And yes, there are now at high tide sometimes fish from the ocean swimming in some of the streets of Miami Beach and Delray and Fort Lauderdale. And the rainfall in Carolinas, Secretary Clinton mentioned what they're still dealing with there. They got 17 inches of rain because the warmer oceans not only make the wind speed much stronger than it has been in the past on average, but it also dumps all of that water on the land. And she mentioned the role it plays in health. Just yesterday, there were 6 more cases of Zika announced in Dade County. And the public health authorities are doing a great job in really wrestling with it. And these tropical diseases have spread so quickly, partly because of airline travel and the transportation revolution. But the changing climate conditions change the places where these tropical diseases become endemic and put down roots. The mosquitoes mature faster, and then the virus in the mosquito incubates much faster. And they bite more often because they're cold-blooded, and when the temperature goes up, their metabolism goes up, and they spread the disease way more quickly. So these and many other consequences, including the fires out west that Secretary Clinton talked about, are really wake-up calls for us. Mother Nature is giving us a very clear and powerful message. We cannot continue putting 110 million tons of global warming pollution into the atmosphere every day as if it's an open sewer. We've got to stop that. We've got to wake up and recognize the need for change. So most people know that we have to change this, but here's the really good news that more people should know. We can change this. We now have the ability to change this. It's going to be a long, hard fight. We've got a long way to go, but we now have the renewable energy technologies and the efficiency improvements and electric vehicles and sustainable and organic agriculture and sustainable forestry and the other ways of changing our lives for the better that can sharply diminish the amount of global warming pollution that we're putting up there. And Secretary Clinton is exactly right that we can create good jobs in the process, jobs that can't be outsourced. She's also right that either China or Germany or some other country other than the U.S. could become the renewable energy superpower of this new century. One day last December, Germany, which is much higher in latitude than the U.S. and pretty cloudy at that, one day they got 87% of all their electricity from wind and solar and renewable energy. We can be on track to do that as well. And China, yes, China's the biggest polluter now, but they have begun to change big time. Their coal use is going down, their overall emissions are going down, and they've just announced that in next year, in 2017, they're adopting a nationwide cap-and-trade program, and they're taking other measures to reduce and to create those jobs in China. And in Paris, the Paris Agreement is a big deal. Yeah, it's not enough. Yes, it needed to do more, but it is by far the biggest step forward the world has ever taken to solve the climate crisis. Every nation in the world, virtually, I think there were 3 or 4 little ones like maybe Nicaragua or something like that, who didn't, but virtually every nation in the world agreed to phase out these greenhouse gas emissions and go to net zero emissions early in the second half of this century, and to begin that process now. And it sent a powerful signal to businesses and industries and investors. And I can tell you that signal is being received. We hear news every single day of more businesses making that shift. So the question in this election, and this comes back to my first message, is which of these candidates is going to continue the progress and actually increase the rate of progress. With Hillary Clinton, we'll build on the progress made under President Obama with the Paris Agreement, and she will seize the opportunities. After all, solar electricity and wind electricity is now way cheaper than it was years ago when some of us started sounding the alarm about this crisis. Hillary Clinton knows this very well, and she's worked with President Obama. Since the beginning of the Obama administration, the cost of wind electricity has come down by half. Solar is down by 64%. LEDs down by 94%. We've seen electricity from solar increase 30 times over. Last year, in the entire United States, in the calendar year 2015, if you look at all of the new electricity generation that was added in the U.S. last year, what percentage of it do you think was solar and wind? 71%, virtually zero from coal. And it's already creating millions of jobs, and it continues to get cheaper and cheaper every single week. World records are being broken every month now as it continues to get cheaper. Now, Hillary Clinton knows this not only because she has studied it and not only because she's worked with President Obama, but her work in the Senate emphasized this. Her work on child asthma and air pollution.
All right. Former Vice President Al Gore, who lost a very close election in Florida, campaigning in Miami for former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. He just reemerged in the land of hanging chads and butterfly ballots, discussing right now the importance of fighting climate change, his signature issue. It's something the Clinton campaign hopes will drive millennials to the polls, and especially in places such as Florida where the election's so tight. CNN's Jeff Zeleny is there traveling with the Clinton campaign in Miami, Florida. And Jeff, there is a certain degree of strangeness watching Gore campaign in the state that cost him the presidency. And you heard the crowd at one point start to chant, "You won, you won."
There is indeed, Jake. It really takes us back to that 2000 campaign, which both you and I covered, of course. And when the crowd was chanting, "You won, you won," he had an answer to that. He said that that's why every vote does count. People have to, it's not good enough now to say you won, because he said elections have consequences. So, of course, he very much did not win that election at the end of the day. And the 16 years after the fact certainly shows that. But he said it's Exhibit A for why he's trying to encourage these students and others to vote, Jake.
And for those who are too young to remember, George W. Bush won the state of Florida and thus the election by 537 votes. And so Al Gore said he was Exhibit A in the importance of every vote counting. And Jeff, this appearance by Gore on the campaign trail is coming on a day in which Donald Trump, in a tweet, called for voters to check out WikiLeaks and look at newly published, hacked and stolen emails from Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's personal account, Republicans seizing on one particular exchange involving Clinton National Press Secretary Brian Fallon.
They are indeed, and that is because Brian Fallon used to work in the Justice Department before he went to the campaign. So the Trump campaign is saying it's an example of collusion. They say it's an example of a political official who worked in the campaign, was still in contact with his old colleagues in the government, in the Obama administration. But that is not taking over the energy of this campaign rally. The Clinton campaign is trying to sign up new people to vote. There's a deadline tomorrow. and they think they have the upper hand in this race. Hillary Clinton back in Florida tonight with Al Gore in tow.
What I am most excited about is to be here with one of the world's foremost leaders on climate change, Al Gore.
In Florida, above all, he's still the father of all symbols for why every vote matters. A blast from the past with a message for the future.
When it comes to the most urgent issue facing our country and the world, the choice in this election is extremely clear. Hillary Clinton will make solving the climate crisis a top national priority.
Climate change is now Gore's passion. That's why he's urging millennials and any skeptics to stop Donald Trump and send another Clinton to the White House.
Hello, everybody.
As Republican disarray grows deeper by the day, Democrats suddenly seem more united than ever. An uncanny reversal. In the 2000 race, a highly disciplined GOP thwarted Gore in the Florida recount. Gore kept President Clinton off the campaign trail back then, stung by the Monica Lewinsky scandal. But with the stakes of this election so high, Gore agreed to come off the sidelines in Florida. A day-long flashback. Bill Clinton also in the state today, but campaigning solo, registering voters before Wednesday's deadline, extended one day because of Hurricane Matthew.
Early voting in Florida starts in 13 days. If you don't vote, it's a half a vote for the other guys.
Trump's path, no matter how fleeting even some Republicans believe now is, still relies on the 29 electoral votes here. That's why Clinton called into a Florida radio talk show to explain her roadblock plan.
Florida is the key. If we win Florida, there's no way my opponent can win. We cannot be complacent. We cannot rest.
All this as the Clinton campaign deals with another batch of hacked emails today from WikiLeaks. Campaign spokesman Brian Fallon, who previously worked at the Justice Department, appears to be getting information from his former colleagues. He wrote, "DOJ folks informed me there is a status hearing in this case this morning, so we could have a window into the judge's thinking." The Trump campaign seizing on the email, calling it collusion between the Clinton camp and the Obama administration. And so far, the Clinton campaign does not have any comment on this back and forth. Privately, aides said there was no a collusion or special information. That was information that Brian Fallon could have learned through public means, but it is something that the Trump campaign is seizing and tweeting on, Jake. But more importantly here, as you see Al Gore still speaking here, the WikiLeaks, the sheer fact of them, the White House is saying they are going to respond to Russia in some measure, and President Obama could address that tonight when he is on a campaign trail in North Carolina. Jake?
All right, Jeff Zeleny in Miami with Hillary Clinton and Al Gore. Chew on this, America. Donald Trump has apparently been